Yo, what's up, guys? I want to talk to you a little bit about emotional reactivity. So, emotional reactivity is when a particular event, where I'm going to put this phone, stirs up a lot of emotion for you, and it feels like it stirs up a disproportionate amount of emotion for what it is. And it feels like a massive deal to you at the time, but it's actually not such a big deal. Now, if you've always been reactive, like if you've always had this little bit of fight or flight response when certain things come up that trigger emotions, then you probably won't know that you're being emotionally reactive. You'll just think that the person you're talking to or the thing that's happening is really bad and that it's their fault or the event's fault. And you'll just be like, oh, why does this keep happening to me? Like, what have I done to deserve this? Like, people always have problems with me, like I'm actually really drama free. Shit just keeps happening to me. No, I'm afraid that's not the case. I used to be like this. When things repetitively happen, it's always you. There's a saying like, if you bump into an asshole first thing in the morning, maybe you just bumped into an asshole. But if you bump into assholes all day, then you're the asshole. So yeah, emotional reactivity is basically something we want to minimize because it's a fight or flight response, which is tied to a particular initial trauma or a belief set or, things you've inherited from your parents, worldviews, sort of bad habits, bad ways of thinking, unhelpful ways of thinking that once served a purpose but now don't. And that emotional reactivity is what really stirs you up and creates that like need to knee-jerk react that you then have to go clean up. Like being emotionally reactive doesn't have any benefits. You always have to go back and clean up the mess, or you end up just like pushing everyone who loves you away and withdrawing from all of the good things in your life because they all trigger you. And what I've noticed with working with this reactivity, because we've mentioned it's kind of fight or flight associated, and it's also belief and thought associated at the unconscious level, it helps to work with your body. So it helps to learn what it feels like to not be in a state of reactivity. So what you need to do is incorporate yin practices, incorporate really calming, grounding practices. I do qigong every day, standing. Incorporate more of these kind of down-tempo things that really calm the nervous system so that you actually know what it feels like to take a beautiful full breath, so that you know what it feels like to genuinely be relaxed. And to spend enough time there in that relaxed state where you're functioning really beautifully and effortlessly, that when you become reactive, you notice because you'll feel a physical shift. This is something that you can't feel if you're always in it. So for me, like I used to always train strength in the gym, like maximal strength output stuff. It was all about Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, going as hard as I possibly could. And I got really strong and I got really tense in my body. And I was internalizing a lot of like anger and heavy feelings. And I didn't know because it was just normal for me. I didn't realize how much shit I was carrying. And I was trying to use the endorphins of strength training to kind of cover that up because I didn't have the psychological tools, the relational tools, the emotional tools, the non-judgmental self-awareness and love to deal with it. So I just trained my ass off. That turned my body into something very twitchy. That turned me into someone very tense and highly strung. I was great at creating massive amounts of tension, which does have its benefits in strength training. But that physical tension, coupled with the excitation of the nervous system and my ability to go to 100 really quickly, wasn't actually helpful for my health. And it wasn't actually helpful in times of conflict because I would go straight into like fight or flight, let's go. My system was so used to ramping up, but it didn't know how to ramp down. And eventually what happened was chronic illness, like fatigue, gut issues, unexplained crashes, I had like no immune resilience. I'd get sick all the time. My body was constantly trying to process things, detox things, heal from things, and I just wouldn't give it the time or the space. Because you might know this, but the immune system is suppressed when your cortisol levels are high. So cortisol is a stress hormone, and when you're in a really stressed state, which super hard training can put you in, and other life events, and your bucket's just too full of all that hard shit, then your immune system is going to be suppressed until later, when you stop doing that stuff, or when you crash and your body says, we have to deal with this, you have to take it easy. And then all of the symptoms come out. And the symptoms coming out is actually your body kind of processing things and letting them go. But most people then see the symptoms and think, oh, why is it that I suddenly look like shit, feel like shit, I've got this rash, I've got, God knows what. Why is this happening? I've been feeling so good. You have been, but that's because you don't have a deep connection with your body and with the state of relaxation that it thrives in. So I don't want to go too much into the symptoms and the sort of medicine healing aspect of that. The point is that like often things start to come out and reveal themselves when you're actually in a state of rest, which is really good. And so people think that it's the other way, that it's really bad, but it's actually okay that things are coming up and being finally externalized and expressed from the system. So consider that. So the other thing is, it's just really important over time to start incorporating these down regulation practices, and these practices which help you reduce muscle tone, that help you reduce nervous system excitation, that help you reduce emotional reactivity, that help you feel less wired and tired all the time. At one point I had insomnia, terrible insomnia, and I was also so tired. It's like my nervous system's natural rhythms of like awake, asleep, and the seasonality of my life, I'd been fighting against that so hard that I'd taught myself not to allow myself to to relax. That's the level of like fight or flight I was in. And for some context, this was after my dad dying. This was after a breakup. This was like, I was not happy at home. I didn't feel connected to, well, I did feel connected to a purpose in a sense, but I felt like I was really, really struggling to make something of myself. So we're talking a lot of stress. And yeah, I just found over time, as I gravitated towards more of these softening practices, that it started to make a profound impact on my life. And it was actually the thing that helped me to shift. The softening practices in my body, learning to literally feel and be softer in my body, and to modulate tone and reduce tension, and actually have like a bit of a sliding scale instead of just fucking intense or nothing. That enabled me to have conversations with people and become aware of how it was showing up in my body, and become more relaxed and less volatile, and less of a number as well. Like I started to, the thing when you're really volatile, when you get angry with people, when you don't know how to express yourself and things hurt you a lot, the other extreme is to just like withdraw, because you know how painful that is for yourself and for everyone. So you just numb, you just suppress or repress, you just avoid. So it's volatility. It's this that's what reactivity is. It's like you overreact or you underreact, but you're never quite able to meet the situation where it needs to be met with the level of intensity required and the level of nuance. So the first step, body, qigong, yoga, calming stuff, grounding stuff, specifically things that help you melt the tension lower down into your system. It rises up as frustration and anger and like confusion and hyperanalysis into the chest and into the shoulders and into the head and into the hands and all of that. And what you need to do is like relax that down into the hips and the belly and the legs, the root chakra, all of those areas, into the feet, towards the ground. And that's why Tai Chi, Qigong, standing practices are so, so good. And I'm going to put one in the description. I'm going to put my freestanding guide in the description so that you guys can hop on there. It doesn't even ask you for your email. It's a Notion template with 3 YouTube videos and a couple of notes on how to approach the practice. And then you can go there and spend a few weeks on each one. You'll feel the difference, but this stuff has been so helpful. Now, the next layer, okay, so why that helps is because the groundedness of it allows you to sit with feelings in your body for longer and to understand them and to feel them better. And when you can feel, you can heal. That increased body awareness means that you can be more curious about your reactions rather than fearful about your reactions, because you're still going to react to things. Like, we all have this propensity towards fight or flight. We all respond to threats based on how afraid we are. And this turns some of that fear into curiosity, so that when you do react, you don't then react to your own reactions. You're just like, oh, wow, okay, I'm reacting. How does this feel? Oh, that's interesting. And you can kind of look at it from a neutral, almost scientific, biomechanical or somatic perspective. It just becomes an interesting phenomenon that's happening in your body. As that removes some of the emotional charge, you then don't have to externalize it as much back onto the other person or fight against life. The next part of this, beyond that, once you've implemented the standing work, is you need to start looking at your belief systems and your subconscious prisons. Basically, these are beliefs that you hold about yourself and about the world, which you formed as a protective barrier when you were young. So your caregivers or whatever, in early life were your source of survival. And so you couldn't possibly comprehend that they were flawed humans. It would be almost irresponsible of you to set a boundary and you wouldn't know what that was, and to push your caregivers away, because they're literally your source of like food, shelter, physical safety, emotional safety. So you end up just kind of like dealing with all of their shit. Like, any issues that your caretakers have or the people around you have as a young child, you kind of just like internalize that so that you can keep looking at them as if they are God, as if they're everything to you. It's hard to be angry with the person who is looking after you and taking care of you. And if you piss them off too much, then they might stop. And yet they're actually hurting you and they're hurting themselves. And so you internalize and suppress that by default sometimes as a kid. And you do that by holding a particular belief, which is like, I am bad, I'm not safe, I'm not worthy of love. Like, there's a bunch. And the reason that they're in such simple language is because when you're a kid, you don't have a complex framework to understand these things. So usually that part of your psyche just still operates with that really simple language because it's been frozen in time. It's like, it's traumatized, it's frozen. And what trauma is the inability to respond flexibly to things as they're happening in the present moment. So what that means is, if you're carrying that trauma, then anything that happens now, you're reacting to it as if it's that initial event. So you're reacting with the same fear about feeling what you felt before as the first time you felt it, except that that's not happening anymore. So you're just becoming more and more sensitive to the triggers and activations which remind you of an event which was really hard for you to process, but that's not real now. So you're essentially reacting to the past in the present. You're thinking that something's happening that isn't necessarily happening. So part of the process to fix that is to recognize that you haven't actually felt the raw emotion, whether it was happiness that you suppressed, whether it was anger that you suppressed, whether it could be anything. It's not always a bad thing. You haven't felt that emotion truly, clearly since then. All you felt since then are your reactions to the fear of feeling that emotion. This is pretty hard to wrap your head around, but it's amazing. you've only ever been reacting to your fear of experiencing that experience again. You haven't actually relived it. So you haven't been reliving it. You've just been stuck on a loop of like disconnection from reality. And who you think you are is probably not who you really are. This goes into deep psychological work, which we can talk about in other videos. But the point is, when that's released and discharged, it feels like you're seeing the world as a child again with fresh eyes, and yet with the skill and capability of current you as an adult, which is fucking awesome because you're way more capable than you were. So we combine the physically supportive practices that ground your energy and help you to be cruisy, non-reactive. We combine that with an understanding of the belief mechanisms that you've internalized and all of the shit that you're carrying in a non-judgmental way, because we all do it. And actually these things form up upgraded new understanding that we're going to move towards, and the new gifts that we can access that come from the wisdom of the things that we suffered with. And the result is you experience life as a child would, with the capacity that an adult can. And so it's like very spacious in comparison. You can do all these things, you have all this freedom, and you have all of these responsibilities too, but you won't feel the heaviness and the burden of past traumas upon them. You'll just be like, yeah, I'm involved in life, you know? For example, as I've become less emotionally reactive and understood some of my subconscious prisons, my dog went from feeling like this terrible responsibility that I've had to look after for so long, and I hadn't been able to go on holiday and, you know, didn't feel supported, like single dad energy, but with a dog, because my dog is quite full on. To the point where he just feels like a gift now. And I just recognize that all of the feelings of inconvenience, that he's so annoying, he's so difficult, I'm so worried about this, these were just things that I had internalized about myself, because at some point someone treated me as if I was really annoying and really difficult and, you know, whatever. So I'm just projecting that onto my dog. When I realized that I was doing that, I was like, oh, you're just a dog, dude. You're just a mirror. You're just chilling. You're just being a dog. And I've got all this head noise that I'm pointing onto you and telling you all of these things. But if I relate to him differently, and I treat him like a gift, and I recognize that it is a wonderful thing to be able to share my life with him, then that's what he becomes. And then I feel that too. The giving of pure love is also receiving of love, because love isn't scarce and one-directional. It's everywhere. The sun is shining through my window right now. It's so nice. So that's it. Just a little check-in video. Emotional reactivity. Instead of crazy responses, over and under reaction, and trying to plan ahead into the future, and then like not being able to fulfill the planning of the future because of all of the uncertainty about the future, you end up your life just gets simpler and simpler and simpler. You just become more and more and more present. The fluctuations become smaller and smaller and smaller. You start to see that from every low there will be a high, and from every high there will be a low, and you start to just recognize the patterns and feel safer in your body to actually experience them. And your system has this wonderful way, when you actually let yourself experience life and you start to understand life, it has this wonderful way of providing you with what you need when you need it. That's the wisdom of the body and the divine intelligence that works through it when it's unimpeded by the traumas of the past. Fundamentally, I will leave you with this. Fundamentally, there is one human fear, and it's the fear of experience. Always the fear of experience, not of non-experience. Experience is a given. It is here already. Everything that is going to happen will happen. That is a given. So don't argue with reality. What is here now is what you need to be working with, and there is plenty to work with, and there is plenty of fruit to be had in opening to the experience which is already here, regardless of whether or not you open to it. So might as well. And then you can have an experience of flowing with life rather than having an experience of being dragged. All right, thank you for watching. Much love. I will speak to you soon.